No one expected the groom to freeze at the altar. Not inside a cathedral filled with silk gowns, flashing cameras, and whispered envy. Not when the wedding music had already softened into sacred vows. Everything was perfect, until an old woman stepped forward. Her clothes were worn, but clean. Her hands trembled slightly as she leaned on a wooden walking stick. Security moved instantly to stop her. Guests gasped. But before anyone could pull her away, she reached the groom, Ethan Mwale, leaned close, and whispered 6 words that drained every trace of color from his face. Ethan's hands began to shake. The cathedral fell silent, and in that silence a truth waited, one powerful enough to shatter everything Ethan thought he knew. Long before white flowers filled the cathedral, before tailored suits, luxury cars, and headlines calling him a billionaire, Ethan Mwale lived by one unbreakable rule. Every morning, no matter how busy his day looked, he drove himself to work. Not his chauffeur, not his armored SUV, just Ethan, alone, windows down, mind quiet. And every morning at exactly 7:10 a.m., his car slowed near the old bus terminal on Cairo Road in Lusaka. That was where he first saw her. The locals called her Auntie Miriam. She sat on a cracked concrete block near the bus stop, her back slightly bent. A small wooden tray rested on her knees. On it were lottery tickets, 2 packs of biscuits, and nothing else. No loud begging, no shouting, no chasing people down. Just waiting. The first day, Ethan barely noticed her. His thoughts were tangled in contracts, steel shipments, numbers that never slept. His phone rang, and he pulled over, searching for better signal. That was when a soft voice reached his open window. "Sir, please." Ethan turned. The old woman stood slowly, careful with her weak leg. Her clothes were faded but neat. Her hair was wrapped in a dull blue scarf. Her eyes, dark, steady, tired, met his. "I don't need much," she said quietly. "Just $10. Ethan frowned. People asked him for money all the time. Security assistance, investments, donations, thousands, tens of thousands. But $10? "That's all?" he asked. She nodded. "That's all I need today." Something about the word "today" unsettled him. Without asking questions, Ethan reached into his wallet and handed her a crisp bill. She didn't smile widely. She didn't bow. She didn't bless him loudly. She simply said, "Thank you, sir. May God remember you." Ethan drove away, telling himself it meant nothing. Just another morning. But the next day, she was there again. Same spot, same tray, same quiet posture. When she saw his car slow, she stood. "Good morning, sir," she said gently. "Please, $10. Ethan hesitated. "Didn't I give you money yesterday?" "Yes," she replied calmly, "and I was grateful." "Then why are you asking again?" "Because yesterday is finished." That answer stayed with him far longer than it should have. He gave her the money. The third day, she didn't even ask. She just looked at him. And Ethan, without fully understanding why, reached for his wallet before she spoke. $10. Every morning. Rain or sun, traffic or silence, busy or free, Auntie Miriam was always there, and she always asked for the same thing. Never more, never less. After 2 weeks, Ethan noticed something strange. She never spent the money near the bus stop. Sometimes he parked across the street and watched. Auntie Miriam waited until he was gone, then slowly walked to a small roadside pharmacy. Other days, she bought bread. Sometimes she paid a bus conductor, even though she walked most places. No alcohol, no gambling, no waste. Once, curiosity pulled him further. He followed her, not closely, not like a spy, just enough. She entered a public hospital, one of the overcrowded ones. The the kind people avoided unless they had no choice. Ethan watched her pull out crumpled bills, count carefully. $10. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He thought about his mother, Ruth Mawale, a woman he hadn't allowed himself to remember this way. She had raised him alone, sold vegetables, cleaned offices at night, and when she fell sick, when money ran out, she had stood near bus stops too, asking strangers for help. Ethan sat up in bed, his heart pounding. The next morning, he didn't slow down. He drove past the bus stop. In his rearview mirror, he saw Auntie Miriam watching his car disappear. She didn't chase him. She didn't shout. She simply sat back down. The image haunted him all day. By evening, guilt pressed against his chest like hunger. The following morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. Auntie Miriam was already there. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised. "I knew you would come back," she said softly. "How?" Ethan asked. She smiled faintly. "Because people always do when they remember who they used to be." Ethan handed her the money, then paused. "Why $10? She looked at him for a long moment. "Because that is what I once needed, and someone gave it to me." Ethan swallowed hard. "Who?" She had her head. "That is not a story for the road." From that day on, something changed. Ethan didn't just give the money. He greeted her, asked if her leg hurt, asked if she had eaten. She answered politely, but never invited more questions. And she never crossed one line. She never asked his name, never asked what he did, never asked where he lived. She treated him like a passing stranger, even though she saw him every morning. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan Mawale began to feel it. This wasn't charity. It was memory. And whatever Auntie Miriam was waiting for, it was getting closer. Auntie Miriam's days followed a rhythm the city never noticed. Before the sun fully rose over Lusaka, before engines roared and horns swallowed the quiet, she was already awake. Her room was small, barely more than a concrete box behind an old mechanic shop. Inside, there was only what she needed: a thin mattress, a wooden chair, a worn Bible, and a framed photograph placed carefully near the window. Every morning, she sat on the edge of her bed and rubbed her left leg. The injury was old, never treated properly. Some days it burned like fire. Other days it felt numb, as if it didn't belong to her anymore. She never complained. After wrapping her scarf and smoothing her dress, she knelt slowly and prayed. "God," she whispered, voice trembling but steady, "thank you for another day. Give strength to the man who gives without asking, and give me patience to wait." She never prayed for money, never prayed for miracles. She prayed for time. At the bus terminal, Auntie Miriam took her place as the city woke around her. Vendors shouted prices, conductors argued, children ran barefoot between buses. People passed her by, hundreds of them, eyes forward, hearts elsewhere. She never stopped anyone, never begged loudly. She waited. Some mornings, Ethan Mwale arrived early. Other days, traffic delayed him. But Auntie Miriam never doubted he would come. And every time he did, she studied his face, not greedily, not desperately, but as if she were reading something written beneath his skin. After receiving the $10, she followed the same path. First, the pharmacy. She bought blood pressure medicine, the cheapest brand. The pharmacist knew her well and often tried to give her extra. "You'll need more," the young woman would say. Auntie Miriam always shook her head. "No, others need it too." Next came the bread stall. She bought a single loaf and tore it in half. Half for now, half for later. Some days she shared pieces with street children who hovered nearby. They called her Grandma. She never told them her name. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, she went to the public hospital. Not for herself. In one crowded ward lay an elderly woman who could no longer speak. Years ago, that woman had shared a sleeping mat with Auntie Miriam when both of them had nothing. Auntie Miriam paid for her basic care whenever she could. $10. Always $10. Meanwhile, Ethan's curiosity deepened. He noticed how Auntie Miriam never lingered near expensive shops, never followed wealthy strangers, never tried to make herself visible. One morning, rain poured heavily. Ethan assumed she wouldn't come, but there she was, shoes soaked, umbrella torn, waiting. "Why are you here in this weather?" Ethan asked, concern slipping into his voice. She smiled faintly. "Rain does not cancel waiting." Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're unbelievable." "No, I am patient." That word pressed against something deep inside him. Over time, Ethan began bringing small extras, water, fruit, once a thick shawl. Auntie Miriam accepted politely, but something about her never changed. She didn't lean closer, didn't grow familiar, didn't cross into his life. It was Ethan who crossed into hers. One afternoon, he parked his car and stepped out. People froze. Some recognized him instantly. Phones appeared, whispers spread. Auntie Miriam looked up, startled. "You shouldn't stand here," she said quickly. "People will talk." Ethan smiled faintly. "Let them." He sat beside her on the concrete block. The ground was hot and unforgiving. He didn't care. They sat in silence as traffic roared behind them. "Do you have children?" Ethan asked gently. Auntie Miriam's fingers tightened around her Bible. "I had a daughter," she said after a pause. Ethan waited. "She was braver than me," Auntie Miriam continued. "She loved too deeply, trusted too much." Her voice softened. "The world was not kind to her." "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "So am I, every day." He wanted to ask more, but something told him not to. Instead, he asked, "Why do you keep waiting here?" Auntie Miriam looked straight ahead. "Because someone I am waiting for will pass here." Ethan smiled faintly. "You see hundreds of people." "Yes, but only one matters." That night, Ethan dreamed of his mother. Not as she was when she died, weak and pale, but as she had been when he was a boy. Laughing, sweating under the sun, holding his hand tightly as buses roared past. When he woke, his pillow was damp. The next morning, he arrived shaken. Auntie Miriam noticed immediately. "You are carrying heavy thoughts," Ethan replied. "You remind me of someone." She nodded slowly. "Most things that matter do." From that day on, Ethan stopped seeing her as a responsibility. He saw her as a mirror. He adjusted his schedule to never miss her, defended her when questioned, even instructed his driver never to disturb her if he was absent. Auntie Miriam remained unchanged, still asking for $10, still thanking him quietly, still waiting. And every time Ethan handed her the money, something loosened inside him, a knot tied long ago by poverty, loss, and unanswered questions. He didn't know what she was waiting for, but he felt it in his bones. Whatever it was coming. The first person to notice the change in Ethan Wale wasn't a business partner. It was his fiancée. Clara Holden had known Ethan long enough to sense when something occupied his mind. At first, it showed in small ways. He stopped taking morning calls. He drove more slowly. He arrived at meetings quieter than usual, as if part of him stayed somewhere else. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Ethan's penthouse overlooking the glowing city, Clara finally asked, "You've been distracted lately," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "Is something wrong at work?" Ethan shook his head. "Work is fine." "Then what is it?" she pressed, eyes narrowing slightly. "You disappear every morning. No driver, no calls, no explanation." Ethan hesitated. He hadn't planned to talk about Auntie Miriam. Something about her felt private, almost sacred. "There's an old woman I help," he said carefully. Clara looked up. "The one near the bus terminal?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Clara frowned. "Why are you still giving her money?" It's not much, Ethan replied. That's not the point, Clara said. People like that become dependent. She never asks for more. Clara laughed softly. Today it's 10, tomorrow it'll be something else. But tomorrow came, and Auntie Miriam asked for $10. Nothing more, nothing less. As weeks passed, Ethan felt something unfamiliar when he saw her, not pity, but recognition, as if her presence was tied to something unfinished in his life. Far away, unknown to him, Auntie Miriam began counting days. Not the days until her money ran out, the days until Ethan Wale would finally remember the truth. One morning, Clara insisted on riding with him. I want to see her, she said, already dressed, heels clicking across the floor. That's not necessary, Ethan replied. I'm coming, she said firmly. If she's as harmless as you say, there shouldn't be a problem. Ethan said nothing. At the bus terminal, Auntie Miriam was already there. Clara spotted her instantly, the bent posture, the worn clothes, the small tray. She watched carefully as Ethan slowed the car. Auntie Miriam smiled when she saw him, then noticed Clara. Her smile faded slightly, not fear, awareness. Ethan handed her the $10. Good morning, Auntie Miriam said gently, nodding toward Clara. You are welcome. Clara didn't return the greeting. Instead, she leaned forward. Why are you here every day? She asked bluntly. Auntie Miriam turned to her calmly. Because this is where I wait. For what? Clara asked. Auntie Miriam's eyes flicked briefly to Ethan, then back to Clara. For what God has promised. Clara scoffed. And God promised you $10 from my fiancé? Ethan stiffened. Clara! Auntie Miriam raised a hand gently. It's all right. She looked at Clara again. Child, I do not take what is not given. And how long do you plan to keep taking as long as it is offered? Clara pressed. The silence thickened. Enough, Ethan said sharply. Clara exhaled. Fine, let's go. As they drove away, Clara stared out the window, lips pressed tight. She's clever, Clara said finally. Ethan said nothing. That afternoon, Clara made a decision. She called the head of security at the cathedral where their wedding would be held. There's an elderly woman, she said smoothly. She stays near the Cairo Road bus terminal. The man hesitated. Is she a threat? Clara paused. She's unstable. If she appears at the wedding, she is not to be allowed inside. Understood. That evening, Ethan arrived late. Clara was waiting, documents spread across the table. I spoke to a private investigator today, she said casually. Ethan froze. About what? Your mother, Clara replied. His blood ran cold. Why would you do that? Because you're hiding something from me. I'm not hiding anything, Ethan said tightly. My mother is gone. Yes, Clara said, and she spent her final years poor, asking strangers for help. Ethan clenched his fists. Stop. Don't you see the pattern? Clara continued. That old woman reminds you of her. That's why you can't let go. She softened her tone. Ethan, I love you, but you can't build a future while clinging to ghosts. Ethan turned away. The next morning, Ethan was delayed by an urgent meeting. When he arrived at the bus terminal, Auntie Miriam wasn't there. He waited. 10 minutes, 20. She never came. An unfamiliar unease settled in his chest. Across the city, Auntie Miriam stood outside the cathedral gates, leaning heavily on her walking stick. She looked up at the towering building. It is almost time, she whispered. And for the first time in weeks, she did not wait at the bus terminal. The absence hit Ethan Mwale harder than he expected. At first, he told himself it meant nothing. People miss days. Life happened. But Auntie Miriam never missed days. He drove past the bus terminal twice before continuing to the office. The noise, the crowds, the contracts waiting on his desk, all of it felt distant. His mind drifted where it hadn't dared to go in years. To his mother, Ruth Mwale. Her face appeared with painful clarity, the lines around her eyes, the way she tied her headscarf tightly when she was worried, the soft hum she made while counting coins late at night. She was proud. Too proud. She never spoke about the worst days. Only after her death did Ethan learn fragments of the truth. How she lost her cleaning job when the company downsized, how rent fell behind, how sickness crept in quietly. And one afternoon, she had taken Ethan by the hand and walked to a bus terminal not unlike this one. She had asked strangers for help, not loudly, not desperately, just enough to survive. Ethan remembered the shame now, the way he stared at the ground as people passed. Then he remembered something else. One woman had stopped, an older woman, her face kind, one leg slightly lame. She had given his mother money, $10. Ethan's chest tightened. At the office, he called his older brother. "Daniel," Ethan said without greeting, "do you remember the woman who helped our mother at the bus terminal?" There was a pause. "I was younger than you," Daniel said slowly, "but yes, an old woman, bad leg. She brought bread sometimes." Ethan closed his eyes. This was no coincidence. That evening, Ethan returned to the bus terminal long after sunset. Vendors were packing up, buses pulled away in clouds of dust. Auntie Miriam's spot was empty. "Have you seen the old woman?" Ethan asked a nearby vendor. The man shrugged. "Not today." "What about yesterday?" "She came early," the vendor said. "She said goodbye." Ethan's heart skipped. "Goodbye?" "Yes, said she wouldn't be coming anymore." At home, Ethan went straight to his study. He pulled out a box he hadn't opened in years. His mother's things. Receipts, hospital papers, old letters. At the bottom lay a folded slip of paper, a name written in faded ink. Miriam Kasongo. Ethan stared at it, breath shallow. Clara stood silently in the doorway. "You found something," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "Something you didn't want me to find." Clara crossed her arms. "That woman?" "She knew my mother," Ethan said. "She helped her." Clara scoffed. "You're projecting." "She was there," Ethan continued, "when my mother had nothing." Clara's expression hardened. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," Ethan snapped. "What do you think this means? That she's entitled to your life, your wedding?" Ethan met her gaze. "I think it means I owe her more than $10. "That obsession is dangerous," Clara said. The words struck him like a slap. The next few days passed in tension. Auntie Miriam did not return. Ethan sent people to search clinics, shelters, churches. Nothing. Meanwhile, Clara focused on the wedding. Invitations finalized, security tightened, every detail perfect. Too perfect. The night before the wedding, Ethan stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Across town, Auntie Miriam sat on a wooden bench outside the cathedral. In her bag, wrapped carefully in cloth, was an old hospital bracelet. A name etched into faded plastic. Ruth Mwali. She touched it gently. "You said he would come back," she whispered. And he did. Morning came. The city awoke to celebration. Inside a private room, Ethan adjusted his cufflinks. "You don't look happy," Daniel said quietly. "If the past is still knocking," Ethan added, "maybe I shouldn't be walking forward yet." Before Daniel could respond, the door opened. Clara stepped in, radiant and white. "For today," she said softly, "let's forget everything else." Ethan looked at her and wondered. What would happen if he didn't? Outside, Auntie Miriam rose slowly as the cathedral doors opened. The music began, and with every step Ethan took towards the altar, the truth drew closer. The cathedral was breathtaking. White lilies lined the aisle, sunlight poured through stained glass, painting the floor in gold and crimson. The air vibrated with soft music and quiet excitement. Guests turned as Ethan Wale stepped inside. Powerful, polished, controlled. The man who had built an empire. Yet with every step toward the altar, his chest tightened, as if something unseen pulled him backward. At the front, Clara Holden stood radiant, her veil glowing under the lights. She smiled with confidence, certain this day belonged to her. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved." A sound cut through the words. Tap, tap. A walking stick against marble. Heads turned. Security moved instantly. At the entrance stood Auntie Miriam. Her dress was simple, clean, her scarf neatly tied. She looked smaller inside the vast cathedral, but somehow unafraid. "Ma'am, you can't be here," a guard whispered urgently. "I will not stay long," she said calmly. "I only need a moment." Clara's smile vanished. "No," she said sharply. "She needs to leave, now." Auntie Miriam didn't resist as guards approached, but before they could touch her, she looked at Ethan. Their eyes locked. Something ancient passed between them. "Ethan," she said quietly. The sound of his name, spoken that way, made his knees weak. "Let her speak," he said suddenly. The guards froze. Clara turned. "Ethan, this is inappropriate." Auntie Miriam took one slow step forward. "I did not come to beg. I came to return something." She reached into her bag. Security tensed. She pulled out a small plastic band, a hospital bracelet. She held it up. "Do you recognize this?" Ethan's breath caught. The name was visible even from where he stood. Ruth Moale. The cathedral disappeared. Ethan saw his mother lying in a hospital bed, thin, smiling weakly, promising him everything would be fine. His voice broke. "Where did you get that?" Auntie Miriam moved closer and whispered, so soft only Ethan could hear. "I was there when she had no one and when she prayed for her son." Ethan swayed. The officiant stepped back. Guests whispered. Clara's face hardened into ice. "She's manipulating you," Clara said loudly. "This is a performance." Auntie Miriam turned to her. "No, child," she said gently. "This is a goodbye." She faced Ethan again. "Your mother once stood where I stand now," she whispered. "She asked for $10 so her son could eat." Ethan's eyes filled. "She never told me," he breathed. "She wanted you to be proud," Auntie Miriam said. "She asked me to promise something." "What?" Ethan asked. "To watch you," Auntie Miriam replied, "and when the time came, to remind you who you are." Silence crushed the room. Ethan looked at Clara, at the altar, at the life waiting for him, then back at the woman who had waited quietly for months. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. Auntie Miriam smiled. "Because dignity matters, and because some truths must be remembered, not explained." She pressed the hospital bracelet into his hand. Her fingers were warm. "For every day you gave me $10, I prayed you would never forget mercy." Tears slid down Ethan's face. He turned to the guests. "I'm sorry," he said, voice trembling. "I can't continue." Gasps rippled through the cathedral. Clara stared at him, stunned. "You're choosing this?" she whispered. "You're choosing her?" Ethan shook his head. "I'm choosing my mother." Auntie Miriam nodded once. "I have waited long enough," she said. She turned and began walking away. Ethan stepped forward. "Wait," he said. "Please." She paused. "I never asked you for more than $10, she said gently. "Do not start now." Then she left, and the cathedral stood frozen. A wedding undone by truth. The cathedral emptied slowly. Whispers followed every step Ethan Mwale took as he walked out. Not as a groom, but as a son carrying the past in his hands. Outside, the sun burned bright. Life went on. But Ethan's life had already changed. Clara stood near the entrance, veil removed, eyes sharp with disbelief. "You humiliated me," she said coldly. "You chose a stranger over your future." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. "No," he said quietly. "I chose the truth over comfort." She laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Ethan replied, "but I would regret forgetting who raised me even more." Clara turned and walked away, heels striking the stone with finality. Ethan searched for Auntie Miriam that entire day. Hospitals, churches, shelters. No one had seen her. That night he sat alone in his car at the old bus terminal. Her spot was empty. For the first time he placed $10 on the concrete block himself. "I hope you're at peace," he whispered. Weeks later, Ethan received a call from the public hospital. "There was an elderly woman," the nurse said. "She left something for you." Ethan arrived trembling. The nurse handed him a small envelope. Inside was a folded note, handwritten, careful, weak. "My son, you paid me with money, but you repaid your mother with remembrance. I waited long enough to know your heart did not harden. Do not search for me. I am where I am meant to be. Miriam." Ethan pressed the note to his chest. Auntie Miriam had passed quietly that morning. No ceremony, no headlines, just peace. Ethan did not return to his old life. He created the Ruth Moale Foundation, named after his mother. Every morning at 7:10 a.m., meals are served near the Cairo Road bus terminal. Not money, food, medicine, dignity. A small plaque stands nearby. $10 changed everything. Sometimes Ethan comes himself. He never announces his presence. He sits quietly. And when someone asks him why he does this, he answers with a smile. "Because once, someone waited for me."